and what taboos were kept in the past, and we're going to have a look at how, if there are still taboos being kept in the present. So what can ayahuasca researchers learn from the history of science? And we're talking about ayahuasca, which is one of my favourite subjects. Very multidisciplinary field. We've got people from all these different disciplines, biomedicine, psychology, gender studies, etc. But what about history? There's a couple of historians, there's J.R. Hyde, who wrote an indigenous, history of indigenous youth, and there's Jensen McKenna's anthropological history. But I'm a historian of science, and I'm interested in the philosophy of science, and specifically how science was studied in the past, and what that can tell us about how it's studied at the present moment. Because it's very easy to look at Victorian gentlemen and say things like, wow, what incredible arrogance, how closed your mind was, what hubris. But it's very difficult to look at ourselves and say the same thing. So we're going to look at what they did and take a detached perspective on the present and maybe improve our research as a result. So this is what happened in the Amazon. In 1571 was the first time snuff was documented, and its users were called hechiceros, which means sorcerers. In 1768, ayahuasca was described for the first time by a Jesuit, and he said it serves for mystification and bewitchment. In 1851, the Tucana were observed using ayahuasca by Richard Spruce. Richard Spruce was a fantastic researcher. He spent 15 years in the Amazon. When he arrived, he was a bit ill. By the time he left, he was deaf in one ear, had intestinal parasites, paralysed in both legs. He'd also learned 21 indigenous languages and documented all kinds of customs. Amazing guy. Not so much Alfred Simpson, who described ayahuasca as an indulgence which usually results in a broil between at least the partakers of the beverage. And this is what he said about indigenous people. I would wish to be born in mind when savage customs are being treated of, the inconsistency, vagueness, and superstition which pervade the savage's mind and actions. So, lovely chap. Right. We don't know, well, there were no medical studies done at the time because they didn't think that ayahuasca was a medicine. So we're going to have to go somewhere else, but at the same time, in the same time period. And we're going to go have a look at traditional Chinese medicine in the 1870s in Australia. It's a strange thing to look at an ayahuasca conference. And there was a diphtheria, a series of diphtheria outbreaks. Diphtheria is a horrible disease. It swells up the throat of mainly children. You can read stories of sometimes 7 children being lost from one family in the space of 2 weeks. Nasty disease, killed 1 in 2,000 people. And conventional medicine had almost nothing to offer these people. It had nothing, in fact. But Chinaman John's magic powder developed a little bit of fame in the mass media, in the press. And because these Chinese medics were treating children and keeping them alive. So in 1874, a trial was proposed with a doctor called Ah Su. And the guy who proposed it was a member of parliament. And he said that conventional medics should follow Ah Su and watch how he did his business. But the doctors at the time were not interested in that. They didn't want to do that. They delayed for a long time, and then they said, well, the first thing they said was subjects would not be prepared to come forward and do this. And then what they did was they, some skeptical doctors took his powder, took Chinaman John's magic powder, and they did what Ah Su did, which was blow it down the throat of an afflicted victim with a bamboo tube, and they found, not surprisingly, that it was ineffective. But the mass media reports continued, so they decided to undertake a chemical analysis. And this was undertaken by the very august Dr. John Blair of Melbourne Alfred Hospital. So they sent him 4 packages of Chinaman John's magic powder. This picture is not Dr. John Blair, this is an advert from the same period, an advert for Cadbury's, because, would you believe, scientific authority used to be used to sell stuff for us. Dr. Blair gave his expert technical interpretation of the facts, and he said the Chinaman's powder contains nothing new. He then gave a list of what it contains, and he said these things necessarily act as astringents, caustics, escharotics, that means things which take away tissue. In the hands of an ignorant man, these local applications would be productive of a grievous amount of harm, and that ignorant man was Ah Su, is an ignorant pretender. So he went on to berate the public and the press and Parliament for believing in such superstitious nonsense, and he initiated an initiative, if you like, to make sure that any Chinaman calling himself a doctor and practicing would be liable for prosecution. Ah Su left the country. So that's how we dealt with, that's how Victorians dealt with a different knowledge, different medical knowledge system. So what can that tell us about the present? So this question of authority, is authority still important? This is a Zoloft, Zoloft using science. It's quite interesting. So where does science get its authority from? It's a question I want to ask. Now apparently it gets it from empirical study and from peer review and so on and so forth. So this is, we're going to have a quick look at the history of pharmacology. Penicillin, Viagra, nitrous oxide, LSD, very interesting drugs. Does anyone know what these have in common? They were all discovered by mistake. As was MAO inhibition, MAO inhibition, which the indigenous were using for hundreds, at least hundreds of years, discovered in 1952, as were every single class of psychiatric drug. Do you know that? Every single class of psychiatric drug was discovered by mistake. Professor David Nutt told me that. So, and what does pharmacology tell us today? Well, to the layman, it doesn't tell us a whole lot. One of the things it does say, which everybody knows, is that SSRIs are contraindicated. That means you cannot take antidepressants and ayahuasca at the same time. And what is the evidence for this? There is no evidence for this at all. It's a theory proposed in 1998 by Calloway and Robb. I don't want to be mean about them, they're fantastic researchers and theoreticians. This is a report from a psychiatrist that there is no single report of any death or doubtless case of serotonin syndrome that could be attributable to ayahuasca and SSRIs. Eddie Freschner goes further. He calls it an overprotective and unnecessary warning. He says something very interesting. He says the traditional ayahuasca diet recommends a type of banana, it's plantain, which would theoretically be prohibited by the MAOI safety diet. So this is something that the indigenous people were doing in their dietas, which is in direct contradiction to what we say people should do when they're doing ayahuasca. The diet may serve a very rational function to increase brain serotonin by tryptophan intake. So, my question is, why has this theoretical consideration gained a great deal of notoriety? Why is it almost universally believed when there's been absolutely no research? And why has there been no research into the traditional dieta? Something to consider. Because there hasn't been any research. And in fact, it's kind of left out of questionnaires. If you look at the psychological studies, they sometimes report that this person kept a dieta, but they don't say, they don't ask if people kept a dieta. They don't ask if they kept a sexual dieta, if they maintain sexual abstinence. They don't ask anything about what the traditional indigenous perspective has to say about ayahuasca. Generally, there are something to do. Analysis. Analysis means to break something down into its parts to understand it. That's what the word means. And if you remember this, not him, but Dr. John Blair gave his analysis of the Chinaman John's magic powder. So we have various forms of analysis, and it all generally involves taking ayahuasca out of its context. And in fact, you don't see shamans really involved in research. You do, for example, Gabor Mate, he did his tests, or he did his work with using a shaman, but this wasn't a scientific experiment, this was a therapeutic regime. So anyway, he's generally not included in the research. What kind of analysis do we have? We have chemical analysis, brainwave analysis, psychoanalysis, and mathematical analysis. So look at them. Chemical analysis, we break stuff down into its chemicals and we find out what they do. I've done a cura myself for 8 months. I was sick in the Amazon with leishmaniasis, drinking ayahuasca at 4 o'clock in the morning for 4 months every day. But I was also taking a whole lot of other stuff. I was having the bark of a mango tree, having the bark of another tree. I was praying every day. I had a consultation with a 400-year-old slave incorporated in the body of a medium who pressed my arm and told me to pray to certain entities. Now, of course, none of that gets into the lab. It's very difficult to study. So this is a limitation of ayahuasca? No, this is a limitation of science. So what I want to really present here is that science has limitations, and if we start to recognise them, maybe we can find ways of moving beyond them and bringing a bit more of the other parts of the jigsaw story. Brainwave analysis, this is me as well. I was the first person to have psilocybin in this perm thing, the MEG machine at Cardiff University, and then maybe sit there with a ball on my chin and look at pictures of chaos and say if I could see any animals or anything in them. And obviously that's not what happens in an ayahuasca ceremony. You don't do that. What you do is, well, I'm a Daimista, we do quite a lot of praying. No one ever asked me to pray to see what happens to my brain when I pray. No one's ever asked anyone to sing an ear tunnel inside any of these neuroimaging studies. Wouldn't that be interesting? In fact, no one has ever asked, this is what happens, this is about Barking ceremony. They don't take data on moon phase, although that's considered very important. They don't take data on menstrual phase, sexual dieta, icaros, and prayer. So what else can we start to actually test? Wouldn't it be interesting to see? There's some other research in brain stimulation. When you stimulate the temporal lobe, Michael Persson did this with the God helmet, people start to feel the presence of spiritual presence. Wouldn't it be interesting to kind of bring these two pieces of research together? It hasn't been done. Psychoanalysis. In psychoanalysis, you have your set, which is there obviously, and you tell your analyst what's going on, and he tells you what's going on with your brain, I guess. In indigenous circumstances, you don't do that. You don't tell people your visions. You keep them very much to yourself. It's Daime as well. You say, if you tell people your visions, you're going to lose them. And this is the set, the mindset of psychoanalysis, comes from abnormal psychology, and they talk about things like dissociation, primary narcissism, hallucination, and obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, all of these have corollaries, have similar terms, but in either mediumship or the shamanic tradition. Dissociation, we talk about spirit contact. Primary narcissism, we talk about bliss or buhashera or forza. A hallucination, by definition, is seeing something which isn't there. We talk about visions. We think they are there. OCD, incorsto. Incorsto is when a spirit comes close to you and it kind of leans on you. If it's an obsessive spirit, it's going to pass that obsession on to you. Now, this is quite important because there's different ways of treating this kind of thing. And like, for example, quite recently I was called into a situation where someone had kind of really taken quite a lot of ayahuasca and then some mushrooms and been in an absolute state, really, really bad way. And the way me and my family treated her was to sing certain songs and to look after her in a certain way. To cut a long story short, she's now, her parents took her back to her house. She's now in a clinic on antipsychotic medicine because the language is different. Because her in Costo, they called it an obsession. And finally, mathematical analysis. This is interesting. We use mathematical analysis to normalize data, to remove the freak result, because we're not interested in freak results, we want to get replicable results. And this is how we generate significance. If it's mathematically significant, it's significant. But is there any other form of significance? Is there any other form of meaning? What does meaning mean in other contexts? If you get a freak result in the jungle, that's very, very interesting. If you get someone who's cured cancer with ayahuasca, that's very, very interesting. So, this question, so we have this combination of authority and analysis, and this is how it plays out in the real world. I'm the librarian of an academic ayahuasca list, and someone sent a message to the list. They said, can ayahuasca cure cancer? Someone with cancer. And the response to that was, there is no data about ayahuasca curing cancer, which is a way of saying, I don't know. But it's a very authoritarian way of saying, I don't know. If I was to answer this question, I would say, why don't you go and ask someone who's been curing in a tradition for the last 300-400 years? They don't say that. There is no data. I've got two friends, by the way, both of whom were given terminal cancer diagnoses, and they are fine years later, decades later in one case, after giving up their medicine and taking ayahuasca. So, perspectives on shamanism. The Jesuit perspective, like we saw before, they looked at what they were doing, they said this is sorcery, bewitchment, conversing with the devil. The shaman himself, well, the anthropologists say, well, ayahuasca is used for healing and divination. When you hear people talking about looking for inner peace and all that, that's not what they're doing there. They're doing divination, that means finding out hidden knowledge. Wouldn't that be an interesting thing to study? What do scientists say when they look at this spirits moving around? They don't have anything to say because they don't really buy it, basically. And they don't research it, it hasn't been researched. So how can we research these things? How am I doing for time? Okay, I'll just keep talking. So how can we research these things? Healing, we talked a little bit about this. Susanna Bustos did some very interesting research on Icaros, and she was Pakuasi where she was, and she interviewed the shaman and the participants of the ceremony after the ceremony. And this is what she found. She found the participants all said the same thing. They said that one particular Icaro had given them a kind of cathartic healing experience, and their visions kind of unfolded and given them an understanding of what gave them the disease or the addiction or whatever they were there to treat. And so that was quite interesting. There was one specific Icaro for each person. And then she went and interviewed the shaman, and the shaman said, I sent that Icaro to her because she's got this problem. And I sent this Icaro to him because he had that problem. And they matched up. So they were looking for, and they found, rather, transpersonal magic going on. So there are ways of testing magic. Don't believe that there are. Healing ceremony, Janine Schmidt, I'm not going to talk about that. Divination, right, this is fantastic. Jeremy Narby took 3 molecular biologists to the Amazon to a ceremony, and they all had blocks in their work. They'd got to a phase in the work, but they couldn't go on. So what did he do? He made them drink ayahuasca. All 3 of them had breakthroughs in their work, and 2 of them met some kind of a plant teacher whilst they were there. Isn't that interesting? David Luke did some very interesting research with, I'm pretty sure it was San Pedro, 40 trials, and the trials went like this. He got a friend, or someone, to record, or to take 4 clips of videos, and to select which one was the correct one. It was arbitrary. And then Dave took this brew, and he did a visualization, and whatever he saw, well, he was trying to guess what was going to be in the thing. So, for example, the first one he did, he saw a dead planet with all these skeletons running around it, and then he watched the clips, and one of the clips was the scene from Star Wars, from the Death Star, with all the stormtroopers running around. He said, right, it's that one, and it was. And so he took 50 of these trials, very dedicated to his science and his psychedelics thing, and he got a positive correlation about people dish. Spirits, ayahuasca and the god. We'll talk briefly about that. This guy's fantastic, Sergio Fiesta. He's a cardiologist and a researcher into superconductors, and the research he's done is really interesting. He doesn't do any psychedelic research, he's not really into psychedelics at all, he's a spiritist. And he would take cases of, for example, autistic children and various complaints, and he's got hundreds of case studies now. People would send details to him, and he would get a team of mediums to work out what was going on. And he would divide the team in 2, put them in different rooms, and they would give a story of the past lives of the particular person. So, for example, this one autistic child, they said, basically, it just sounds really strange, but the one team of mediums said he was a mafia boss in a previous life, and he killed 200 people, and the spirits of those 200 people were coming to take revenge upon him. And that's what they said in one room, and they'd also set up a group of mediums in the other room, and they said exactly the same thing, they gave the same stories. And the treatment was effective and ameliorated his symptoms, which were kind of a shaking, if I remember correctly. So there are all kinds of interesting ways to test this. What's next? So let's just remember that ayahuasca is our object of inquiry, but it is also a means of inquiry. So what we can do is we can drink it, we can ask it what it wants us to study. And we can also get deeply involved in the traditions. You know, it's very good to know all about the pharmacology of ayahuasca. My own training has been hundreds and liters of ayahuasca, and kind of dancing from side to side. So I know certain things about ayahuasca, and so do these guys talking next door. Right, so I'm just going to leave you now with 2 quotes. One is from the Zobos advert again. When you know more about what's wrong, you can help to make it right. I want us to apply this to our research. And a quote from Francis Bacon, father of the scientific method: science is but an image of the truth. What's this? Oh yeah, that's a book that I wrote. I suggest you buy it. Thank you very much.